so.
All right. Shoot.
What do you see from Oklahoma on film?
Really, really good team. We talked about as a staff. Obviously, they had Trey, my first year as head coach. This team is better than that team. That team had really good players also. When you look back at what everybody did, but collectively, this group looks pretty in sync, particularly on defense. Certainly, best team Porter's had. They're more athletic. They can really make plays at the rim in a way that they haven't been able to on both ends of the floor. Offensively, they can get downhill on you and can finish. Jalen Moore and Ortega always improvements evident. Javion McCullum's added another dynamic playmaker, shot maker to go at Usain. So they're really good. I have no idea where they're ranked. Don't even really pay much attention to those things. Otherwise, you'd be mind-numbing exercise of every opponent you play. But they're legit. They're really good, and they've obviously played really well. And so we got a big task on our hand.
Do you think the way OU started out hot and then kind of has come back down to earth a little bit as conference play got underway, do you think that says more about maybe just what the Big 12 is this season?
I think it says everything about what the Big 12 is this season. I mean, I don't know what Kansas was up to, but I remember having the sense that had they won their game at UCF, which I think would have been the game before they came here for their next weekday game, that they would have been number one in the country in that game. But they lost that game on the road. They won at home that Saturday. But they've now got 4 losses in the league, just over halfway through, right? Yeah, I mean, the league is really good. I don't think we can overstate that. I know there's an idea that maybe it's not as good, but I mean, until you play and coach in it and have to go on the road to the places you go on to and deal with the level of coaching and athleticism and size and experience, the combination of it all, it's as good as it's been, and I've said that every year, I think, since I've been here.
With what you mentioned about what OU does around the rim, does that heighten the importance of a guy like Brandon this week?
Not necessarily. I mean, we need him to play well because he plays a lot. I mean, so I don't know if because of their ability around the rim to do better than they have before changes that. If they didn't, we need him to play really good. It'll be his first experience in this rivalry from this standpoint. Obviously, he's watched a lot of these games, but we need him to play well. He's a big part of us being able to have success when he's played well in conference games. And again, I'm not making a direct correlation to wins and losses because we've had a lot of factors, but we've played better when he's played well. So we need that to happen on Saturday.
Maybe just a different kind of challenge?
Yeah. I mean, 10 games in, right? He's probably seen as much physicality when you talk about the teams we've played already. KU twice, and Iowa State, Tech, and Houston. Obviously, just the volume of it, I think, is helping him. But yeah, it takes some time to get used to. I think he'll be more comfortable as he continues to go through it. But there's no magic time frame where it's like he's got it now. Like, I think we all will see it when it happens. But Tuesday's a great example. He just numbers don't look terrible, but he wasn't great, particularly early in the game.
What were kind of your takeaways from Houston?
I think they're better than I thought they were. I mean, I sometimes go into these games feeling like, man, we're gonna have to play like excellent to win. And I certainly felt that we'd have to play really, really well, but I don't know if that would have been good enough. We didn't play really well. They had a lot to do with that, but they're really, really good. And I think part of it is they have what I feel like our past few years teams have had defensively. They have the ability to make it hard for you to score anywhere on the floor. Like we could have Avery really pressure you, and then dare you to go inside, and there's one dude in there that could erase it. They're not as dynamic in terms of the length and mobility, but athletically, strength, experience. And it's really hard to get a team to do what they do, which is get everybody in constant motion on defense. A lot of people work at it on offense, and people that get really good at it are hard to defend. But very few people can do it on defense, where like everywhere you turn, it feels like every answer you reveal, they present another problem at that turn. So you want to get away from ball screens, which we try not to run a ton of, as good as they are defending ball screens. So we run baseline staggers, and like they don't get screened, or we have to set them a little bit more aggressively. But yeah, they're better than I thought they were going in, and I thought they were really good.
Coach, because of that, even for somebody who doesn't really know what they're watching, if you're just watching the screen like you're watching a basketball game, the restriction of ball movement, it's hard to move the ball. Is that not correct?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the point I'm making. So there are a lot of different ways to attack offensively, right? One is just have a guy who's good enough to go make plays on his own. But they don't let you do that. Or you can bring a second defender in to try to get that guy loose in pick and roll situations. Well, they defend that really well. Well, then if you defend like just running baseline screens and things of that nature, they defend that pretty well. And then when they make a mistake, this is the last part, right? The constant motion. Somebody's there to cover up the mistake that was made on the rotation. Or, we showed our guys several clips of Jamal Shedd literally defending 4 people in a possession. And that's what happens, right? You get a guy who's been in your program 4 years, who understands all of it, can make those kind of plays. But yes, they make it hard on you to make a pass. They contest your dribbles, they contest your shots, and then they make sure you don't get very many second opportunities.
So looking forward to Saturday, Sam Godwin is obviously the leading rebounder in the conference offensively. He gets boards. Are you trying to make that kind of a game plan to crash the boards on defense this Saturday?
Defensive rebounding is always a major emphasis. Because it does a few things. When you don't, you stay on defense longer if you don't rebound the ball. You tend to foul more because those plays happen around the basket. And also, you give up more layups. But if you aren't giving up layups, you ultimately are giving up wide open threes because teams have gotten really good at kicking the ball out. We had one in our game against West Virginia a couple weeks ago. We talked about being a big play that Eric Daly made to John Michael Wright. Defensive rebound is a team deal. Offensively, we don't always send everybody, but we send everybody to have a responsibility to help us rebound because we don't have a great deal of size across the board. We're smaller in the backcourt than we've been in previous years. And so it's got to be a team rebounding mentality for us to have a chance on the glass.
But wanting to try to find him on the floor, right, to box him out.
Yeah, everybody, right? Hughley, he's a big, wide guy. Jalen Moore, really, really athletic. Owe, Suarez. They have a lot of guys who can be disruptive in the paint, on the glass. He'll be a part of that, but not singularly. We obviously know the numbers say he's one of the best guys, and part of it is he doesn't shoot very often either. He knows part of his role offensively is to help his team by getting second chances and maybe getting easy baskets for himself or for his teammates that way.
You guys have had a good amount of success against OU, in the last 8 meetings or so you've had there. Is there really any kind of translation from those to this one, or is it kind of like
No,
circumstances?
Not really. I lose Q from last year some in these games. I don't know how much he played in these games.
He's played 31 minutes against OU.
Okay, there you go. John Michael Wright's played a lot. Pretty sure he started both of the games that we played against them last year. Well, all 3. But that's it. So from their standpoint, Godwin and Owe and Milos have all played, but no one else has. And so it'll be new for a lot of guys, but the emphasis will still be great to us. No matter what kind of year we're having, and obviously we're not having the type of year we wanted to, it's a big deal, and it will be made that way to our team. Not that we're gonna practice longer or do anything crazy, but they'll understand the gravity of it to our fans and former players and just people who love Oklahoma State around here. That we need to make sure that we're fighting for this school on Saturday.
And you mentioned some of that newness right around the conference. There's quite a few teams. I mean, you guys are one of them where your leading scorer is somebody who's in their first year of the program. Is there kind of, when you look at game planning and say, oh, okay, we faced that guy last year, we know what to expect from him in this role with that team, not only is it the league hard to play in, but you're facing guys who might be leading that haven't been there before. So kind of game plan wise, how does that play out too?
Yeah, it's unique, but I think it's a new reality for all of us. I try not to think beyond this year, but you always have to be mindful of what's coming, right? And so one of those things you try to calculate is, all right, so if we return all these young guys, what does the rest of the league look like, And I would imagine a lot of people are going to have new rosters again, and we'll probably need to be pretty active in the portal this spring and make sure we get the type of guys that can help us do better than we've done so far at this point. But your point is well taken. I mean, newness in terms of teams leading scorers. I was watching the KU K-State game from my room on Monday, and I heard something I hadn't heard, which was Kansas has a player who leads the league, 4 of their starters that lead the league in a category. And I think Hunter, KJ leads in field goal percentage. Maybe Hunter Dickinson leads in rebounding. Maybe Kevin leads in points. And I think DeJuan Harris leads in assists. And 3 of those guys played for him last year, but Hunter obviously is new. But everybody in our league, Houston probably has the most back in terms of guys who've been in their program for multiple years. But yeah, that's the new college athletics, not just basketball, but probably all the other sports as well.
Fran had the call the other night, and he's a backer of coaches. And I like Fran for that.
Sure.
I mean, because he understands it. He's
Of
been
course.
there. And he made the comment several times during the game. In fact, he may have been making it when Kelvin charged the floor. But he talked about this is a great nucleus, that you've got here.
Mm-hmm.
And along the lines of his question, you keep this nucleus together. I realize you're always going to have to do the thing in the portal. But Fran kept harping on it. They keep this nucleus together. This is a good basketball team. They just got to give it time to develop.
Yeah, I mean, again, I want to go back a little bit because I do think around this time of year, last year, as you get closer to senior day and all the guys that could come back, we didn't want any of those guys to leave.
Right.
I mean, we had a good nucleus of older guys who we thought could be good help to the guys that we got now, and that they wouldn't have to be out there for 25 to 30 minutes in these games, not quite ready to do it. But the reality is we don't necessarily control their decisions at that point, and there are some things that maybe we can continue to enhance here to make it where those guys do want to stay, but we just weren't in that space at the time. So here we are, and the job is to make sure that the guys that are playing are getting better. And so to his point, yes, if they continue along the trajectory that they're going, they will get better. You just can't assume that that's the case as you could. Let's just go
10, 15 years
Let's just go
ago.
7 years ago
Okay.
when I first started, right? It wasn't the portal, there wasn't NIL. Like you could say, all right, man, we got a good core of freshmen. These guys, like we did with Avery and Chris and Caleb Boone, kind of saw those guys become all league caliber, starter for sure players in our conference. That helped the team win 8 games and fall 1 game short of making the tournament, and without a couple of injuries, one way or the other, maybe could have been even better. But that's just not the reality of athletics. We'll do everything we can to help these guys understand what the experience like this could be over time. We also have to be realistic. I think you guys have sat in this room and heard other coaches talk about our young guys. That's not a mistake, guys. I'm not calling anybody out for doing anything wrong because no one's doing anything wrong. But I think people are sounding the alarm. Everybody knows that players are they're movable. they're
Yeah, I mean.
They're able to be influenced.
We were all in here and heard the West Virginia coach sit here and say, they need to do everything they can here to keep Brandon Garrison.
Like it's a real thing.
Yeah.
So that's college athletics now. That's not what college athletic was 7 years ago. And again, I'm not making excuses about the results or anything. I'm just telling you that that's the reality we have to embrace if we want to really continue to get guys like him, for example, and then keep them so that you can see what's Brandon Garrison look like versus as a senior versus himself as a freshman. Right? We talked about Hunter Dickinson. Brandon Garrison as a senior would kick this guy's butt. Like, I'm pretty confident.
Yeah.
You know? And we think he's pretty good. But he's got a lot to learn to get better at.
You're officially in the second half of conference play. Leading into this game, especially just it being a rivalry, what do you want to accomplish, especially with the newer opponents in the conference you still have left at the end of February?
It hasn't really changed. The way we talk about it is a little bit different because I don't want these guys to lose hope, right? We have 8 games remaining in a conference tournament game for sure. A lot can change. You're 1 week sweep, so winning your weekday and weekend game, winning both of those, from feeling better about how it's going. It's not easy to get there. It's not easy to get one of them. Certainly, we haven't been able to put 2 of them together yet. But what happens is you start to feel different about what you can do based off what you've been able to do. And vice versa. When you don't succeed, it's hard to find confidence in it. But my goal is today, for 2 hours we'll be in the gym, like, let's be better. Like, let's leave there feeling like we got better at something as individuals, but also as a team, and make sure that those things carry into the game. Whether it be today rebounding a little bit better, or making better passes, or blocking out, or communicating more. That'll be the way we approach this thing until we don't get to play anymore, and then we'll evaluate the whole at the end.
When did you kind of learn about what the Bedlam rivalry meant to? Don Michael was talking about how in November when the football team wanted to storm the field, he could just kind of see how much this game meant for people that live in Oklahoma. When did that moment kind of happen for you? Or?
Well, again, I've been a part of rivalries. In high school, I had a real rivalry. Christ the King was it. My best friend played for them, so we didn't ever talk on those days. Like when I was at South Carolina, Clemson was a real rivalry. I went 4-0 against them. I'm never afraid to say that publicly. I'm proud of what they're doing this year for sure. When I was at Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston was a rivalry for us. I've been a part of this at a lot of different levels, but this one felt different because I've watched it. So I always appreciated Carolina Duke, Yankees, Red Sox. Like all those things meant something to me growing up. But when I got here, it felt different. And again, I hadn't been a part of this one, and so I didn't know the history of it. But when I was an assistant, I remember, I'm pretty confident the first Bedlam game was in Norman that year. And they had been kicking our butts, from what I understood. Buddy Hield and those guys, that group. And the team that we hadn't really had much success. I think they beat them at home when Juwan was a freshman maybe, but in terms of winning there or sweeping them, hadn't been done in a really long time. And I remember beating them down there because Juwan Evans gets a steal and throws the ball to Phil Forte, and seeing Phil Forte and Leighton Hammonds, who were seniors that year, how much relief and joy they felt from winning that game, and then to turn around and have to come home and follow it up against a team that was pretty good. And I think Juwan scored like 15 straight to win the game. Like, this building was unbelievable that day. And that was the first time that I felt like, oh, this is different than anything I experienced even as a player. And then being a part of it, my first year we get the Trae Young experience, and my gut instinct told me to do to them what we did the second time. The first time, which was to make him shoot all the balls. I didn't have enough courage and conviction to do it, and then he got like 25 points and 15 assists. And I said, what the heck, if we're gonna lose, well, make him score 50. I didn't think he'd really score 50, but he almost got there.
What's your most memorable Bedlam?
What was that?
What's your most memorable Bedlam?
Most memorable Bedlam. I mean, so the Mitchell Solomon one, that was my first win in Bedlam. and Mitchell Solomon's effort, because that's what I want this program to be about, is outworking people. But beating them in basically back-to-back days, not days, but in games when we had Cade. I think the game down there went overtime, and he played great. He didn't play as well here. But that was a part of a really strong run for us that year, so that one still sticks in my mind as well.
You mentioned you're not going to, practice harder or whatever, practice longer. But how do you kind of stress the importance of this game on those guys?
Again, I don't think practicing, the length of practice really indicates that. Young guys don't. I mean, they'll forget about practice by the time they go to dinner tonight. I mean, like, they'll hate it for the 2 hours we're out there, but then 15 minutes later, I'll be walking out of the gym and there'll be 6 guys sitting around talking to each other, right? That's just what kids are. But just making sure that they hear from Keaton Page and Scott Sutton and Barry Henson, who's around here, and the guys who've lived it, talk about their experience here, letting John Mike talk about his experience playing in these games last year, because I do think they feel different when they play in them. So that'll be more the approach. Besides, I mean, we're kind of aching, and you got to be smart about how you do things this time of year.
John Michael said that the football weekend, the Bedlam football, was the best weekend of his life. Do you think
Number
that
6 wasn't long after that.
Yeah. Do you think that that with all the new faces that went to that game, do you think that kind of helped set the scene of, okay, this is what this means to everybody?
Yeah, I think in a sort of detrimental way to our team.
Okay.
In all honesty, we played our first game on Monday.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, it didn't go so well.
So, yeah, I watched it. I watched the football game, and then I watched the basketball game.
You enjoyed the football more than the basketball game that night.
Say it again?
You enjoyed the football outcome.
Well,
more than
I don't know if I enjoyed the football game more than the football players and the basketball players did.
With a guy like Brandon, who has grown up and seen this rivalry from a fairly close range, do you worry about a guy like him making it too big in his head and feeling like he's got to do too much?
So maybe there's a real possibility of that. What we'll try to focus on is enjoying it. Like, you very rarely, man, and I think this is sometimes where it helps me, because perspective is really important. Like, it's a big deal what we're doing, still a game, right? So I want him to enjoy being a part of something that feels really important to a lot of people. And I want him to enjoy that, because in life, you don't get to do that very often. That's something you're doing. A lot of people are like motivated or made happy. Like, some people's years were made, or lifetime was made when we beat them, and like, let's never play them in football again. Like, I get it, but so I want him to enjoy it. I don't want it to feel like a burden. I want him to have fun on Saturday, because it should be fun.
Oh, with past guys who grew up in Oklahoma, do you notice them having a different perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I particularly remember the Boones playing really well against these guys. Pretty much every time we played them. Mitchell Solomon, felt like, there was always more of an edge. I remember Lindy always feeling, and being from Norman definitely probably adds another element to it. But I feel like the in-state kids, that's why we always want the best ones we can get in here, because this game does help them bring a little bit more of an edge. So, yeah, I've seen that before.
Do you think this game continues into next year? You've talked on it in the past, but
I don't know, and I don't want to get ahead of anything, but Porter and I have discussed it. I do think that there'll still be a basketball game. I don't know if it'll happen next year. Some of the non-conference stuff is kind of ahead of what you would think for a game like that, which would require a lot of logistical. Where do you play it? Do you play it every other year? Do you play it at a neutral site? So I would put the chances of it happening next year pretty small, but I don't think it's over deal for basketball.
It's off the topic, but you just brought up Lindy. How many players have you had that have got the most out of themselves as Lindy has? I mean,
A lot.
he's doing stuff people didn't expect him
Yeah,
to do.
yeah, I would say that. Like, very few guys, I think, have shot what people thought they were capable of. But Lindy always believed that he could play in NBA. I think the thing that I always thought would give him a chance was the thing that's given him a chance is his size and his IQ for the game. He's playing in the perfect organization for it. They really value what he brings to the table. And so, yeah, but we've coached a lot of guys who maxed out what they could do as players at this level. But it's hard. It's a really big jump. It seems like it's the next level, but the next level is like really far away.
Would you say Josh Holder is in here earlier talking about how the jump from high school baseball to college baseball is way bigger than going from Big 12 baseball to professional? Would you say that in basketball it's the opposite?
No. I think what happens in baseball is you got the minor league system to kind of chart your way through. We don't have that necessarily in basketball. The jump from, because again, people just think about NBA when they talk professional basketball. If you're talking G League or maybe a smaller level overseas, you can have those incremental steps. But yeah, going from college basketball to the NBA is probably like going from, college baseball to the major leagues. Like, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't happen. So even the best ones spend some time in, club ball or single A, and if they're expedited like Jackson, right? He's going to be in probably Triple A to start even this year. Like as good as a year as he had last year. It's probably still that 106-mile-an-hour fastball from Aroldis Chapman looks a little bit different than what he saw against, I don't know who they played last year, Millwood or something in Oklahoma City. I mean, like the dude that was throwing 68 on his best day. So it's it's a big jump, but in baseball it's just a little bit more kind of incremental.
So Eric, he started the season for the most part as a starter, and now he's moved to the bench. How do you think he's navigated that, especially for someone who's highly experienced as he wasn't as young as he is?
Yeah, we've touched on this a little bit in a different way. Like it's sort of like those steps are necessary, but everyone tries to avoid the challenges that go with getting better. And we talked about like guys who come in with low expectations that people don't that get a chance to just kind of grow and become good players versus guys with expectations that people, if they don't play as much early, think they're a bust, and then they got to recreate who they're supposed to be. So I think he's handled it really well. I think there's an element of mental fatigue that he's experiencing that he's never experienced before. Like, you guys gotta understand, this is the first time Eric Daly's played in front of crowds, period. Like, I'm not talking about like big crowds. I'm talking about anybody other than like the parents of the guys on the team and like the coaches and their wives and the people who are refereeing the game. Like, he was at a prep school where they don't attend a whole lot. He's played some USA, but he hasn't, like, when he played on November 6th here for the first time, it was the first time. And we didn't have an unbelievable crowd, but it was the first time he played in front of a crowd, a real basketball game that counted for something. So all of this stuff is new for him. We talked about everything being new for Brandon in terms of the physicality, but it's the same. And so taking it all in and being expected to perform at a really high level, it's probably been more challenging than he's willing to let on, but I understand it because I lived it, and I played in front of great crowds as a kid, but the first time I went to Thompson Bowling Arena, and I was like, oh, 19,000 people show up to watch a basketball game. I didn't never experience that before, and it feels like 20,000 of them are cheering against me, and there's only 19,000 of them in here, So there's that process you can't skip steps of. I think he's still doing really well relative to what most freshmen do in college basketball, and I want him to focus on that, like the things that he's doing well, while still working to get better at the things he hasn't done as well so far.
Yeah, I feel like in his minutes, he's had to do a lot of different things.
Mhm.
There's times he's had to score,
Sure.
there's times he's been focused on defense. How do you think he's handled that part of it?
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's hard. Kind of go back to what we talk about. That's why we need these guys to stay together, because restarting that experience is a hard thing. That's why if you have some older guys that can help bring them along, the freshmen that were seniors last year had Lindy and Cam and Thomas Azagua to show them what it was like. And these guys don't really have the benefit of that. They're just kind of being thrown in the fire. So I think he's handled it relatively well, and certainly think he's going to continue to get better and become a really, really good player.
Did things go smoothly with Bryce's surgery?
I don't know how to describe smooth surgery. The doctors feel comfortable he'll be able to recover. it was more substantial, the damage, than they originally thought when they got in. So they had to do a little bit more than they had thought. So, but he's home, recovering still. And so, continue to watch over and pray for his recovery, and think that it'll be a few months. He won't be back this season. That's for sure, because they think it's going to be probably 4 months before he can even throw, and it's a shooting arm. So it's going to take a while for him.